The rise of the machines is upon us. You were warned 23 years ago, you twat. Fear Factory told you with Demanufacture. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe, get notifications. I mean, who wants to miss out on this? As is usually the case with these extended reviews, I'm going to be going to a little bit of the history of the recording of the album. So once again, if you're not interested in listening to my bullshit, just take a look at the timestamp and go straight to that for the actual review of the songs. I got a feeling this could be a long one. Are there any machines here? Machines? Hello. There is a concept to this album, of course, the very obvious one being the battle between humans and the machines, heavily inspired by the Terminator and also Blade Runner. The humans fighting back against a machine-controlled government. Was this machines? Very intense stuff, very great stuff. But one of the things that I really enjoyed was how much the lyrics, I think I have to go through this way, is how much the lyrics actually have multiple meanings, and you can actually look into them in a lot more depth if you're prepared to do that. Very good. Did machines do this? Now, the band was formed in 1989. And they recorded their first album, Concrete. I think it was in 1991, but it never saw the light of day till the early 2000s. I think there was a dispute with the record company as to whether it should be actually released or not. Their first proper album was Soul of a New Machine, which was I think it was done in '92 and was produced by the legendary Colin Richardson. Yeah, he's worked with Napalm Death, Machine Head, Sepultura as well, I think. I just did a fucking review on him, so I should know. And yeah, he produced Soul of a New Machine, which was very much death metal, but with definitely taking it off in their own direction. Fear Factory have been innovators right since the very beginning. More machines! Dino's quite frankly underrated, phenomenal rhythmic playing, Raymond Herrera's Teutonic drum machine-like precision on the kit. And it has to be said that Christian Olwalbers, although he wasn't the original bass player, but he's the main guy that we know, fantastic bass player as well. But Burton C. Bell, his vocal style, is this also a machine? That death metal vocal style that many people were accustomed to, that style, married with the cleaner, more angelic sound of his vocals, switching from one to another. It's kind of hard to remember how groundbreaking that was at the time, because so many bands do it now that you don't even blink an eye. But back then, this really was brand new. I think it was in '93 that they got together with Rhys Fulber, who would form a very important part of the band, as he produced a remix. One of the few, Fear Factory are actually one of those bands, those few bands where I actually enjoy listening to their remixes, and I guess that's because of the machine-like nature of their music. The repetitive, sample-esque sort of nature of their music lends itself quite well to remixing. Anyway, they released Fear is the Mind Killer, which is a line from David Lynch's Dune, and probably comes from the novel as well, I hazard to guess. Deep water, you ain't fucking kidding. I think it was 6 songs that they remixed from Soul of a New Machine, and this was much more in line with where Fear Factory saw themselves going, where they wanted to go in the future, which was melding the human style playing, obviously, with the more mechanical and technological aspects. They simply didn't have the money to do that. They didn't have the money or the technology or the access to do that on the first couple of albums that they did. But Fear is the Mind Killer, that was where the album where they really started to push forward with their sound, with what would go on to feature very heavily on Demanufacture. You're right, only an asshole would do something like this. Demanufacture was released on June the 13th, 1995, but it was recorded between October the 7th and November 20th, 1994. Colin Richardson was once again in the producer seat. I think this was actually more down to the label insisting that they use him rather than him doing it. He did do all the recording, and he did originally mix the album when the band actually fired him halfway through, basically because he was doing far too much of a guitar heavy mix, and leaving a lot of the keyboards and the samples and the more industrial elements that the mechanical elements that the band were trying to bring in. So they actually fired him halfway through the mix and got back in Rhys Fulber. And not only Rhys Fulber, there was another guy as well. The other guy was Greg Reilly. I didn't do too much research about him, unfortunately. I'm sure he's a very talented guy. But yes, Rhys Fulber would also contribute keyboards to the album. I think he did a few of their other albums as well. I'm pretty sure he did Obsolete for sure. Why were you just stood there for that bit? Burton C. Bell wrote all of the lyrics. Dino supposedly wrote all of the music. I'm sure Raymond Herrera had contributions in there as well, surely because of his incredible precision. Christian Old Walbers was brought in to replace Andrew Shives. I'm not sure if he left or if he was kicked out or whatever, but he was brought in, and although he is credited on the album and he is very much down on the album as the bass player, by all accounts he didn't actually play on this album. Apparently Dino Cazares actually recorded all the bass, which I guess would make sense because the bass playing on this album is very much synced up with the guitars. It's not your traditional bass playing, it's very, 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 very tight with the guitars. And with Dino being such an incredibly precise rhythm player, it makes perfect sense that he would have played the bass parts also. My tracks have gone. Now for the uninitiated, I mean, I think it's fairly self-explanatory itself, but this is a concept album. Fear Factory did a lot of concept albums involving the war between man and machines. Very, very heavily influenced from the Terminator films, of course. They even use a couple of the samples from Terminator 2 in this album. You're right, no well-balanced human would do reviews like this. The other main influence on this album is Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which of course inspired the phenomenal film Blade Runner, which many of the lyrics deal with, such as Replica, for example. The story for this album is humans dealing with a machine-controlled government and rebelling against it, fighting back against it, or in some cases just dealing with it. Please make sure your nose is clear of obstruction. Like all concept albums, or all supposed fantasy, it does have its roots and genesis in reality. The band were all living in Los Angeles in the 1990s, which was a city that was tearing itself apart. You had all the race riots, earthquakes, floods, the National Guard being called in everywhere, a very prominent mistrust of the police from everyone. I fucking swear I saw somebody then. I'll just actually quickly read out part of an interview with Burton C. Bell. Demanufacture was a concept album, but it was inspired by true events. We were in a hostile environment. The whole time leading up to the riots, you could sense tension in the air between everybody. Everyone was a target. No one trusted the police. It was surreal. There were guys on tops of buildings with semi-automatic rifles protecting their goods. We were living in demanufacture times, fighting against the man and struggling for survival. So yeah, once again, even though this is a story, supposedly, this is actually very much rooted in reality. Going off the beaten path. Stick to what you know, Ben, stick to what you know. The album was recorded at the legendary Chicago Tracks studio, which apparently was a shithole. A lot of drug dealing going on in the place and a lot of bad shit going on. The band didn't particularly enjoy being there, but it was chosen primarily because bands like Skinny Puppy and Ministry and other more industrial type bands had recorded there in the past. So I guess they were trying to capture that sort of vibe. Creepy motherfucker. I did hear a story that they were recording in the same studio as Bon Jovi, who was recording his These Days album, and the band were asked if they could keep the noise down as their noisy industrial metal was bleeding into the sounds of the Jovester. I'm sure he's a good dude. I'm sure he makes music that he's into, but you know, whatever. Don't fuck with Fear Factory, man. One last thing before I get into the actual tracks themselves. About time, that joke you normally do. A lot of people disputed whether Raymond Herrera actually played drums on this album, purely down to the precision and drum machine-like sound that was produced. The band assure us that this was the case. He played along to a click track and used drum triggers, which is a very popular thing for a lot of bands. I think a lot of bands sampled drums from Metallica's Black Album to achieve that well-produced sound. But yeah, he used a click track and drum triggers, as well as manipulating the drum tracks afterwards with Pro Tools. I think they had an early version of that back then, to achieve the machine-like nature, which is what they were trying to do. Dino said in an interview a couple of years back when they were touring the album again in its entirety, how the concept for the album was if machines were playing music, and that's what they wanted to replicate. Replica. So I think now it's about time to actually get into the songs. I'm going to be concentrating on the lyrics an awful lot on this. It is a concept after all, and there is a story behind it, but I'm going to try not to be too dismissive of the music, because that is absolutely incredible, with fantastic performances from all involved. Demanufacture, the opening song, the title track of the album and the first song on the album, opens up with a furious kick drum from Raymond Herrera, before going into a chugging riff from Dino Cazares. Going back to what I discussed earlier on with what was going on in LA at the time, the opening line from Burton on this is desensitized by the values of life, and this was very much informed from what was going on in LA where they were living at the time. Snowy Road! Great start to the album, and one that is very much based in reality as much as it is in the future with the War of the Machines. Fucking windy up here. Next up we have Self-Bias Resistor. What a fucking song. Now this is a song about rising up against an oppressive government, the machines in this case, and like a huge amount of the lyrics on the album, this can be seen in a couple of different ways, which is what's so inspired about the lyrics on this album. They have their obvious root in the concept of the album, but they have multiple meanings, and they can be applied to however the listener views them. On the one hand, you've got the rising against the oppressors, the machines, but it also could be seen as not being part of the herd, standing out and being your own person. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Yeah, not being part of the herd, being your own person, taking a personal stance against mediocrity. It's getting a bit windy up here. Starts off with a real stop-start staccato rhythm section. In terms of just a quick note on Dino Cazares, phenomenal rhythm player. Not much in the way of leads, if anything at all of lead playing. He's always just seen himself as a rhythm guitarist, and a phenomenal one at that. His precision on the instrument is absolutely fantastic. How am I looking? Oh. Definitely worth mentioning the cleanly sung chorus. All these years they've tried to bring you to your knees. Burton doing such a phenomenal job on this track in particular. Just fantastic. Okay. Fuck this, I'm going back the other way. It's getting very, very windy up here, and yeah, not the easiest of paths to take. Okay, getting back in a more sheltered territories. Got to watch my step. Burton's vocal performance on this track. All these years they've tried to bring you to your knees. 23 years after hearing this song, it still sends shivers up my spine. Such a great vocal performance, as it is throughout the album. Such an inspired album. I've just changed the battery. To the forest I return. Though the snow is deeper, it's actually seems far more secure. Right, next up we have Zero Signal. Now, not only does this start out with a sample from Terminator 2, I think it's from the scene where Sarah Connor is having a dream nightmare about the bomb exploding. I think there's a scene where she's seeing all the children playing in a playground. Not only does it have that sample, but the riff is pretty much the instrumentation in general. Guitars, drums, bass is basically recreating the main Terminator theme. Dung, dung, da, dung. The theme goes like that, does it? After the intro to the song, it goes into a much faster galloping alternate picking riff, and some truly inspired drum playing from her era. His drums on this track are absolutely fantastic. Inspired, wonderful. Zero Signal, I believe, and I could well be wrong, let's be honest, I could very easily be wrong, but I believe the lyrics in this song are addressing looking to God for an answer and realising that there isn't one, that there isn't a God. Sending a signal out and getting zero signal back. Part of the lyrics in the song, I am down on my knees, praying to God to save them, and he doesn't answer. Ends with the very haunting lyrics, I am lost, followed by I am so numb, repeated over and over, well, 6 times. Again, I could be totally wrong about fucking slipping everywhere. Again, I could be completely wrong about the lyrics, but it's my channel. Next up, we have probably one of their most well-known songs, Replica. This is the one more than any other that is influenced by Blade Runner and Philip K. Dick's book that inspired it, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. It's me! This is pretty much from the viewpoint of a clone, a replica, who is aware that that's what they are, that they've been bred to serve a purpose for the machines. Now, I think it's also worth mentioning for this for the lyrics on this song, and this is one that I hadn't actually considered before myself, but I was looking through some of the forum sites researching the album, and there's quite a few people who believe that the song has another meaning, which is this is actually somebody who is born from rape, somebody who is born from such a traumatic event, and how that cycle continues. Part of the lyrics of the song are I am rape, I am hate. So I can completely understand how that could be applied to this song, and that meaning could be applied to the lyrics from this song. I still think that, bearing in mind the actual concept of the album, that the Blade Runner-esque clone replicant side of things is by far the more likely. But yeah, I can totally understand where people get that meaning from as well. Very dark lyrics. Next up we have New Breed, and along with Body Hammer, which will be coming up later on, this is by far one of the most mechanical songs on the album, which actually makes perfect sense because we are the new breed, we are the future. This is the robot army going out en masse. They've been produced, born, bred, beaten, and they're going out now to suppress the humans. This is the machine army on the rise and on the march. Gnarly. We are the new breed, we are the future. We are immune to life itself. Cold rules are reality. Humans are fucked. This place is creepy as fuck, yo. Next up we have Dog Day Sunrise. This is a cover from a band called Head of David, who featured Justin Broderick, who is a figure that keeps on cropping up in the reviews that I do. So I think I'm gonna have to start doing videos about actual individuals themselves and their influence, because Justin Broderick is just one of those people who just keeps coming up as an influential person. He left Napalm Death in 1986, I think it was, and started Head of David, and in 1988 started the incredibly influential Godflesh, who would obviously have a huge influence on Fear Factory and industrial music in general. Very, very influential guy. Now, even though the lyrics weren't written by Burton C. Bell, in this case, they do actually fit in with the concept of the album very well. There's a kind of mundanity. I think the lyrics were, I don't know if it was about written about working in a factory or just the mundanity of the place that Justin was growing up in. But the machine-like nature of the routine of life, the drudgery of life, working in a factory like a machine. Yeah, because of that, I think it fits very well within the concept of this album. Next up, we have Body Hammer, and this has truly one of the heaviest riffs ever. God damn, is this a crushing riff. I absolutely love this riff. I've never quite been able to settle on whether this is written from the machine or the human perspective. I guess it could be seen either way. Only an asshole would do something like this. From the human perspective, I guess this could be seen as somebody who has just reached breaking point. They've reached a point where they're just so fucked over and so pissed off, full of aggression, that they just become a tool, a killing machine, a body hammer. And I guess it could be applied to the machine perspective for pretty much the same reason, although they were bred specifically for that purpose. I've never quite been able to ascertain whether it's from the human or the machine perspective, but I think part of the beauty of this song and the lyrics again is they can be seen from either angle and applied to other factors of life. The intro starts out with drums from Herrera, and then joined by an ominous bass line. Well, a bass line that actually mimics the drums, so it's not ominous. The lyrics go straight into "I lied right to your face." I lied right to your face. The lyrics seem to deal with what appears to be a compulsive liar, somebody who just pours, I think it mentions in the lyrics about pouring gasoline on themselves, and the lie is like a fire that burns. Basically they'll just kill them, they'll fuck themselves. Don't lie. Lying doesn't work. Just don't be a twat. So it deals with a compulsive liar who just can't seem to stop himself. They know that each lie will get them deeper and deeper into trouble, but they can't seem to stop themselves. I do wonder if this there's a link between this and politicians. Maybe, I don't know. It's a very stark sounding song, And if it is purely about a compulsive liar, it's the one song in the album I think that I'm trying to find the link with the actual concept of the album. As I said, maybe there's something to do with politicians or the ruling class, of lying right to your face over and over again and not stopping, and just don't lie. Don't lie, people. I was here earlier. Well, I was at all these places earlier. I've just been coming back the same way, you dickhead. HK Hunter Killer up next, and this is probably the standout track on the album for me. A standout track of standout tracks, if you will. Starts out with what I'm guessing is actual real TV reports of what was going on in LA at the time, basically saying how everyone has a gun, everyone has a weapon, they're not afraid to use them, very quick to use them on another human being without even thinking about it. In terms of the concept, I guess this can be applied to the machines and the oppressive regime that the humans are growing up in. Is just a part of life. Starts out with the line, "The conscious man is dead, and I buried him." Now this one is open to interpretation, and despite the fact that the HK Hunter Killer in question, in terms of the Terminator films, is a Terminator, it's the flying machines that hunt and kill. Funnily enough, I actually think this is from a human perspective. This is the human that has rebelled against the machine overlords and has to do whatever it can to survive. I must steal to survive is one of the lines in there. I've become what they detest, a delinquent survivalist. Without fear and no regrets, they fucking say, I am a criminal. Not only are they a criminal to the machine oppressors, but I guess they're a criminal to the humans that still abide by machine law. I think that's what it means. Maybe I don't know what it means. Track number 10 is Piss Christ, and this is the second song of the album that features a direct sample from Terminator 2. Fuck you. I think the actual sample comes from when the Terminator, the T-1000, played by Arnie of course, runs into Sarah Connor for the first time at the asylum. And obviously her last encounter with the T-1000 was that he was the enemy, so this is before she realised that he was on her side. In a 2016 interview with Metal Hammer, again I'll put a link in the description, Burton stated that this song directly questions Christians' belief in God. Actually, in the lyrics on the album it says, "Look to the sky on Judgment Day, a human God that was man-made." So again, maybe questioning on the day of deliverance in this term, in this particular case being Judgment Day, the day that the machines take over. Humans look to God to save them, and once again he isn't there. Maybe it's about self-accountability as well. Instead of looking to something else to save us, we should be looking at ourselves. And I'm not anti-religion in any way. Before any comments come in about anti-religion or anything like that, I'm not anti-religious by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's always good to be able to question things, and you know, this song ends with another stunning vocal performance from Burton. Where is your saviour now? Very, very haunting outro to this song, and one that segues seamlessly into the next song and the final song on the album, A Therapy for Pain. And this is a truly dark, beautiful song. Although you've still got a lot of the heavy instrumentation from Dino and Raymond, again Christian I don't think played on the album. It's Reese Fulber on keyboards and Burton's vocals that take centre stage on this particular one. The lyrics deal with, I guess depending on how you read it, death or suicide. Whether the death in question is self-inflicted suicide or from the being a casualty of war. This is seems to be from the perspective of someone's final moments on on earth, and relinquishing, letting go of the pain of life to the relief that death brings, Lady Death in this case. I tried so hard reflecting the harsh life that that this person has grown up in, the machine world, the constant war, and the surrendering to death. The therapy, and a therapy for pain, letting go, no more pain, no more suffering that death brings. The final verse goes, "When we finally meet the end, she lets go of my hand. Walking into realms of light, there will be no death tonight." Now, again, I'm not quite sure whether this means the person actually dies or not. Does Lady Death guide the person into the light so that they're relinquished from life and relinquished from pain, or does Lady Death let go of the person's hand before going into the light? Therefore, the person lives and carries on. I'm not sure which one I go with. It changes depending on the mood I'm in, I guess, when I listen to it. But truly fantastic end to the album. Very haunting song. So there we go. That is the end of Demanufacture and the end of this classic album review. I won't be doing classic albums again for a couple of weeks at least. They've got so many albums that I need to get reviewed. Coming up next week alone, we have the new Ministry album, we have the new Judas Priest album, we have the Between the Buried and Me album. I intend to review all three of those. The response I've had from you guys for the viewers' requests has been positively overwhelming. I think the last count there were about 25 albums that have been requested that I've got on my list, which as I'll be doing them every other week, I think at this point that's going to be about a year's worth of reviews. Yeah, there is absolutely no shortage of videos coming up. I've just got to get them done. So thank you again for watching. Make sure you subscribe. If you made it this far, fucking subscribe, for God's sake. Yeah, subscribe.